Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. I'm very excited about it. I hope you are too. We have Katie Kimball with us. She's the voice of Healthy Kids Cooking. She's worked to restore the health of our young generation, one kitchen at a time for quite a few years now. She's a cookbook author. She regularly presents on TV, and she shares her entire journey on her blog, Kitchen Stewardship. So she is with us today to give us some awesome lessons about um, cooking with your kids, and I'm very excited. Anyway, just a couple of things before we get started. Please enter any questions you may have as soon as they arrive in the chat. We'll do Q&A at the end, but it's great to see questions coming in all the time. And yeah, with that, I will let Katie take it away.
Well, hey, everyone. I would love to hear where you're from, who's here, how many kids you have. It's just so fun to share and so fun to see where everyone's from. Big welcome to Bridget and Janelle. So good to see you guys here. You are here. Oh, and by the way, if you're in the chat and you want everyone to see so that we have some conversation, be sure to change that chat to all panelists and attendees. And if you're on Facebook, just know that I can't see that, but Caitlin will grab those answer or questions for the end. And I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you're here for Beyond Baking Cookies. We're going to talk about why kitchen work with your kids is the best way to build connection, confidence, and creativity in kids. I'm Katie Kimball from Kids Cook Real Food, and I am on a mission to get every kid in America learning to cook. You guys, 1/3 of college students cannot hard boil an egg. Okay, these are the children that most American families are launching into adulthood. And besides that, I don't think this applies to homeschoolers, by the way, but a new survey calculated that Americans have just 37 minutes of quality time every weekday. What in the world? Okay, again, homeschoolers, probably that's not an issue because you spend a lot of time together, but this is the world that our kids live in, right? This is the world our kids live in. And we need to give them the life skills they need to nourish themselves from now forever, right? So I want to hear in the chat, what kind of adult do you want your kids to grow up to be? What kind of qualities and habits, if they have, that you'd say, oh, I'm so proud of them, right? When someone bumps into your kid at church or at the grocery store when they're a grown up, they say, oh, I saw your son today. He's so what? I saw your daughter today. She's so what? What are those words and habits that'll just make your heart overflow with pride and joy and gratitude? And I ask this question of people a lot. So I've heard hundreds of answers, and parents often say, Katie, I have so many dreams for my kids. I want them to be responsible, independent. I'd like them to be successful and intelligent. I really want my kids to be caring and kind and compassionate, right? Parents want their kids to be generous and honest. Especially homeschoolers, a lot of hard work ethic in there. And there's so many dreams we have for our kids. So how can we build that? I believe, as a kids cooking teacher, I believe the kitchen is literally the best venue for every single one of these habits, right? And when I think about the benefits we see from teaching kids cooking skills, almost every single one of those habits can happen just by teaching your kids to cook. Okay. And so, I know a lot of times though, especially with homeschooling, you've been with your kids all day. Sometimes that kitchen is your haven, right? At the end of the day. And sometimes you think, man, the kids are just going to be too messy. They're going to be too slow. Like this is not going to go well. I just need my space. And so I want to give you a little bit of motivation to get your kids in the kitchen, because there are so many benefits. First, obviously, they gain the life skills that they need, right? People have to cook in order to eat 3 to 5 times a day, or they have to pay others to do it for them, right? And before getting a career, most kids can only afford cheap, unhealthy food if they don't know how to cook for themselves. So I think it's so important to set our kids up for a lifetime of nourishment. We find that having these real life skills gives kids such confidence. In fact, more than half of our members teaching their kids to cook say confidence is the most surprising benefit. And it's not just confidence in the kitchen, it's confidence that spills out into other areas of life. Okay, think of it. If a child knows that they can do real authentic skills that adults do, that they can do something as vital and meaningful as nourishing their family and nourishing other people, their confidence is going to grow. And it's not just in the kitchen, right? This taking risks in the kitchen allows them to take risks to be successful in business, right? To fall in love, to explore their world as they reach adulthood. And we can help them take safe risks in the context of our kitchens while they're still at home. And I mean, for those of you who have goals of a hard work ethic and who want to raise responsible kids, there is nothing better than just doing it, right? So serving the family food teaches even the littlest of kids, even those like egotistical preschoolers, to think outside themselves, right? This is how we lay a foundation for kids who will serve others. And man, we've hit upon so many of those qualities already that parents want in their kids, that you want in your kids. And anything else, right? The sense of humor, maybe your faith background, you valuing life, working in the kitchen side by side creates opportunities for you to model and discuss those traits and pass on those traits because you're working together toward a common goal. Cooking isn't just about the kitchen. It's really that important. I would love to see a yes in the comments if this sounds like something you definitely want for your kids. Let me give you a little perspective. I'm a teacher, so I like to kind of let you make folders in your brain for the information I'll share. In the next 40 to 45 minutes, we're going to talk about brain science to show how important cooking is for kids. The biggest mistake that I see parents make when they do start to let their kids work in the kitchen. We'll talk about when to introduce knives to kids. That freaks some parents out, but if they're going to cook healthy, they've got to unlock the produce section by knowing how to cut fruits and vegetables up. Well, I'll teach you my 3-step superpower process that we use in the kitchen, but works to teach kids just about anything. And we'll talk about that all important question of how in the world do we motivate kids to want to help us in the kitchen? Because man, Katie, a little help sounds great, but I think my kids are going to be a little cranky about it. We'll talk about 5 different ways to motivate kids to work in the kitchen. It seems we don't have a lot of people in the chat, so we're just going to move right on real quick. Personally, I didn't really start trying out my cooking chops until I was in college. I didn't do a lot of cooking as a kid. And when I had like my first opportunity to be in an apartment, like I think around junior year of college, I got super into cooking. I got all these old issues of Quick Cooking and like Cooking Light magazines from my mom. And I would turn the pages and I'd bookmark them and I was trying new recipes all the time. And one evening I invited a couple of friends over for a little dinner party. And I was so pumped. I had found this recipe for applesauce pork chops. Okay. I don't think I'd ever worked with pork, never made pork chops for sure. And it called for a clove of garlic. I went to the store. I'd never bought fresh garlic. I bought what I assumed was a clove of garlic. And you know, you might have seen my screen before and you might know what's coming. A lot of people start laughing around this point. I bought what I thought was a clove of garlic, but instead I bought a bulb of garlic. And I was trying to cut up the whole bulb of garlic and all the papery stuff, right, is flying everywhere. It's getting stuck to everything. And I thought, whose idea is this? Like, how is it possible to cut this thing up in all this paper? And like, I don't even understand this. So I probably had at least half a bulb of garlic in applesauce pork chops. Whew. It's a good thing my friends were forgiving because let's just say it didn't go very well. So I had to learn from failure, right? I now know the difference between a clove and a bulb of garlic. And learning from failure is something that we talk to our kids about all the time, right? How helpful and how important that is. And that's another benefit of teaching kids to cook while they're still at home, right? They can learn from failure when it doesn't matter quite as much. There's someone there to fix dinner if they totally mess it up. You know, they're not like wasting their precious college student money. And there are lots of other reasons. So let's talk about some brain science reasons that we may want to teach our kids to cook. And if you did get the worksheet, by the way, I think Homeschool Buyers Co-op sent out the worksheet. If you got that, this is kind of where the worksheet starts. So brain science says that when kids are involved with food, they're more likely to eat it. This happens for a couple of reasons. First, we're human, and when we open a loop, we like to close it. So when you're involved at the beginning of something, you tend to be nudged toward wanting to be involved at the end, which is great. Also, and this is especially important, listen up, parents, if you have what you might call a picky eater, okay? Because all kids have a different number of times they need to be exposed to a food before they're willing to eat it. So often, if you see your child as like a picky eater, that just means that they might need 157 exposures to, let's say, broccoli, whereas perhaps another child just needs 3 or 4. Okay. And then, but by the time that their exposure bucket is filled, they're finally willing to let that doggone little piece of broccoli pass their lips. Well, if your kid has a big exposure bucket, that's a lot of pieces of broccoli to put on the plate. So the great news is that any exposure counts. Shopping for the broccoli, washing the broccoli, cutting up the broccoli, cooking the broccoli, serving it to the family, boom, that's 5. So anytime the kids are exposed to food, and when that happens in the kitchen, there's less pressure to eat. It's going to get kids a lot closer to getting through their picky eating and being more open to trying new foods. We also know that research tells us just one strong bond with an adult helps protect our kids from scary things like drug and alcohol abuse and depression and suicide attempts. Now, as homeschoolers, obviously, you do spend a lot of time with your kids and you probably are quite bonded, but bonding around food creates opportunities for just deepening that bond. And maybe, your kids might even be able to cook for or cook with other kids, other adults. Like these pictures are my son Paul's godmother, who's just a real part of his life. And I'm just always so happy, right, that he has more than one strong bond with an adult to keep him grounded, keep him rooted. He's 16 right now. And I want him to be as grounded as possible so he doesn't feel like he has to go searching for, other things to fill him and keep him in there. If you're worried your kids might not be interested, that's when we'll talk about those 5 ninja motivation tips later in the presentation. Third reason brain science teaches us that it's so great for kids to cook is something psychologists call the confidence-competence loop. And it's pretty common sense. It means if you're competent, if you know how to do something, it raises your confidence. You feel good about it. Well, people like to feel good. That means you'll come back to learn more and you'll increase your competence. That will increase your confidence and you just keep coming back for more. And so when we think about our kids learning to cook, our job is just to get them into that loop for the very first time. And the snowball effect of the competence confidence loop will take over. And then not only are our kids continuously building in confidence, but they're also continuously building their skills in the kitchen without us having to work so hard anymore. And finally, I did this great interview not too long ago with a therapist named Marcy Pusey. And she said, Katie, it's so important for kids to tell stories. For, our stories connect us to our family history. They help our brains stay healthy. And the best way to help kids open up and tell their stories and be creative is to get their hands working. And she has kids paint or draw or work with Play-Doh. And I said, well, would that apply in the kitchen? She's like, oh my goodness, yes, right? That when kids use their hands and are creative, it stimulates the tactile part of our brains, sort of in the bottom half of our brain. And it basically opens up the upper part of our brain, that prefrontal cortex, where all the executive functioning and the important, higher level thinking skills happen. This is probably why kids are more likely to have great conversation with you when you're working together in the kitchen and your hands are busy. And in fact, this is my son, Paul. Again, he's just turned 16. And when we have a list of chores for the family, he'll often choose to cut up vegetables. He says, Mom, I really like it because it feels kind of therapeutic for me, right? So that's why I call this more of a therapeutic creativity, chopping vegetables and stirring and sauteing and all the wonderful sights, sounds, and smells of the kitchen. So just to recap real quick, these top four brain science reasons that teaching your kids to cook is going to make a real difference for them. First, it really does improve healthier eating. We see it all the time. Second, there's that strong bond and that connection in families and with the people you're feeding too, even outside your family. Third, we truly see confidence built in the kitchen that flows into other areas of life. And finally, that fun therapeutic creativity that kids so need, especially in our sort of screen-based world. Now, a lot of parents are worried their kids will be too messy or too slow. So let's shift a little perspective. on that. This is my family. I have 4 kids. They're currently 6, 9, 12, and 16. And this picture is a little old, but I love sharing it because it looks pretty good. It looks like a pretty good Christmas picture. And it's my neighbor's porch because I don't have a decorating bone in my body. And my other neighbor just came over and snapped this shot. And I have a third friend who knows how to do Photoshop and brighten it up a little bit, right? And so it just reminds me of like our world. We see all these images on social media and we see food in like on Pinterest and it always looks perfect. And rarely is real life the story of how the picture looks, right? Real life is the story behind the picture. It's not a social media highlight reel. So a lot of times when we think, we get this beautiful image of like, oh, working with our kids in the kitchen will be so lovely. And then we open up a bag of flour with our kids in the room and we're like, oh, the background. So I just want to encourage you to not seek the Pinterest perfect vision of working with your kids in the kitchen, right? Seek the real life vision and know that building those life skills, being vulnerable, allowing them to make mistakes is not only okay, but it is a really important part of parenting, raising healthy, independent adults who know how to feed and nourish themselves. Now let's talk about, I've watched a lot of parents go through the process of teaching their kids to cook. And honestly, guys, the biggest mistake that parents make is totally mental. And really, sometimes we just misunderstand our children's abilities. So with little kids, we tend to overestimate what they can do. We're hoping for a little bit of that Pinterest perfect feel in the kitchen, and we forget that they're just really, really little. And their small motor control is not that great. And so they can't measure a flat teaspoon and they spill something and we're like, oh man, like this is just annoying, right? But if we could get our expectations in the right spot, that will fix everything. So it's super easy to fix that mistake. You just need to remind yourselves with little ones like 6 and under to slow down, which means don't cook right before dinner. Cook with the little kids, especially like in the afternoon or on a Saturday or a Sunday. But we need to lower our expectations. Okay. It's so hard to remember being 3 or 4 or 5. And as homeschooling parents, you're probably pretty good at this already, but just remember, like, they don't know anything. They have to be taught every little step. So when you work with little kids in the kitchen, I want you to think small, right? You have to like reverse your brain to like not knowing how to do anything and cover, break skills into the smallest steps you can think of. For example, when I teach kids to carry a plate, it's a 4-step process, 4 steps. And it goes better because they can follow those steps and then do what I do instead of me just sort of assuming they can do more than they can. If you've got a child under 6, just tonight, have them like brush your teeth, have them do what we call in our house finishing touches on your teeth. And you'll immediately feel their small motor skill capability and be like, oh, that's why they spill when they try to measure a teaspoon of salt, right? Now, here's a quick tip that you can use tonight with your kids if they are pre-readers, if they're not reading yet, or maybe they don't know their numbers or fractions really well. Get out the 4 basic measuring cups and the 4 basic measuring spoons. Have your little preschooler put them in size order, which is a great preschool skill. And then you're going to teach this, okay? You can rename the measuring cups and spoons, the dad, the mom, the kid, or big brother or big sister, and the baby. Now, obviously, not every family has this structure, but I think kids get it from storybooks, and it's just the easiest structure for them to learn quickly, 30 seconds, right? So the cup is the dad, the half cup is the mom, the third cup is the kid, and the quarter cup is the baby. And when you teach your pre-readers, or really like 6 or 7 and under, when you teach your kids this system, now you have empowered them to do something for you when you're not right next to them. Right? We don't have to worry about our kids being in our elbow space, right? And slowing us down, because now I can say to my 3-year-old, hey, honey, can you get a mommy spoon, right? Here's some salt. Here's a little spill bowl. Can you go to the table, honey? Because mama's really busy in the kitchen. And can you measure a mommy spoon of salt for me? Not too hard, right? Now, it might take some kids 5 minutes to measure this mommy spoon of salt. But it's okay because you're still working in the kitchen. They bring that salt back in their little bowl. You can check it if you want. And then you put it in your food. And when you're eating dinner that night, guess what you get to do? You get to say, oh, wow, this food is so good. Do you know why this food is so good? Well, it's because little Gabe helped measure the salt, and salt makes everything taste better, right? Or basil or oregano or whatever is in your dish, right? Now the child has this amazing confidence opportunity. They've done something very simple, but they've contributed to the family. And it's this shared language, this shared vocabulary that helps you do it. And that's our superpower at Kids Cook Real Food. Now, what if you have older kids, right? Parents actually make the same mistake in reverse for our bigger kids. Okay, this is like age 7 and up, basically about the time they learn to read. Now we tend to underestimate what they can do. Okay, check out this writing. On top about the dog, that's my daughter in 2nd grade. And on the bottom, that's when my son John was in kindergarten. What a difference, right? In 2 years, I guess 3 years of school, their academics, their small motor control, their relationships, everything vaults forward. But often we're still just baking together and allowing our kids to dump pre-measured ingredients and stir. So my challenge to you to fix this big mistake is to raise the bar, raise those expectations. As soon as your kids can read, they are most likely mature enough to read and follow a recipe by themselves and get at the stove and even use a sharp paring knife. That's what we do in Kids Cook Real Food. Now, we keep it fun and we teach in a really kid-friendly way and we keep the kids laughing. And I think that's really important too. When we raise our expectations, we've got to still teach in a really kid-friendly way. So I encourage you to do that. Amy from California says she's got one of those older kids and they know the tweens. So Kelly, age 11, is mad because I won't buy processed foods and she likes rice-a-roni. Well, Kelly, 11 years old, learned to make sort of our homemade knockoff rice-a-roni in Kids Cook Real Food. And she said, Mom, it tastes just like the real rice-a-roni. And Amy said, total score. I also learned a thing or two myself, right? A lot of moms tell us that they're still learning. And what a great example for their kids to enter into learning to cook together, right? So even if you're not a great cook yourself, don't let that stop you from passing that life skill, from giving that life skill to your kids. Okay, so what about knives? I said we were going to talk about knives. Katie, can knives really be kid friendly? Well, I say yes. And in fact, we introduce knives as young as age 2. When implemented properly, knife skills are safe and they're such an empowering technique for kids to know. Okay, so if you're thinking about maybe introducing some knife skills to your kids, there are 3 things you need to get right. The first is proper technique. In Kids Cook Real Food, we have 7 kid-friendly phrases we use, like up and over soldier and hey, hey, out of the way, to help kids know where to put their hands and how to hold the knife. Second, you've got to use the right knife, okay? The right knife for the food. With our little kids, 5 and under, 6 and under, just use a regular dinner knife, a regular butter knife. They still know that it's a knife. You can teach them to respect it like a real knife, and they can cut all sorts of things like bananas and soft fruits and cooked vegetables. Okay. For our early readers, kind of our early elementary kids, they're ready often, especially if they've learned the techniques with the butter knife, they're ready for a paring knife and the appropriate food. And then finally, your kids can absolutely use a chef's knife. Now, caveat to that, chef's knives range between 5 inches and like 12-inch blades. I would keep children at 5 or 6-inch chef's knife. We have a 5-inch Victorinox that's super affordable. It's like a $20 knife on Amazon. Love, love, love that one for kids. In the picture is my 6-inch Wusthof, much more expensive. That's because it's my knife and my kids always steal it. My son, John, who's now my 9-year-old, when he was 7, he asked to level up to the chef's knife. He said, I think I'm ready, Mom. Man, what cool confidence is that, right? I think I'm ready for a chef's knife. I'm 7-year-old 2nd grader. And that was so cool. And then finally, once you have the right knife, you got to get the right food. Okay. So I truly believe, and I've seen it time and time again, that knife safety hinges as much upon the right knife and the right technique as the right food to fit the knife. Okay. A paring knife is not a good idea for an onion. A chef's knife is not a good idea for an apple. We've had very, very few. I used to be able to say we've had no injuries in the Kimball family, but pretty much everyone in the family has cut themselves once. But we've had very, very few knife accidents. And when it does happen, we always know what went wrong. My son, Paul, I think he was probably 14. He walked into the office one day. He goes, Mom, I just cut myself with a knife. It was just kind of a poke. He wasn't really hurt. And he was just shocked. And I said, well, tell me what happened. He said, well, I was cutting an apple with that little knife with the green handle. I said, oh no, because that little knife with the green handle is a dollar store paring knife, like the shortest little blade in the world. And he had the biggest, fattest, like 1.5 pound apple, in our fruit bowl. I said, well, hon, you chose the wrong knife for the job, right? The apple was wider than the blade itself. So that's a really good example of a mismatch. Okay. But when you choose the right food and the right knife for the child's hands and their experience, and you teach them the right techniques, which we go over extensively in our course with actually 1/4 of our lessons are knife skills, your kids can absolutely be safe in the kitchen with knives. Amy Bailey, different Amy as the previous one. Amy Bailey says, after working with knives and fire, we had the best experience we've ever had in the kitchen, right? Most parents hear knives and fire and they're like, this is not going to go well. Best experience they've ever had because they implemented the techniques properly. Now, you don't have to be a certified teacher like me to share cooking skills with your kids. Obviously, again, homeschoolers, you guys are such a great group, so suited to be doing this. But I want to teach you our simple 3-step process from the Kids Cook Real Food course. This is going to help you reach your littlest cooks with right where they are, with like breaking everything down into tiny steps. And it's going to help you challenge the older ones, because if you feel more confident in their abilities, right? Because they've been taught correctly, you'll be able to let them go further in the process of cooking. Okay, so let's break these down. When you demonstrate, and this is kind of a forgotten piece sometimes, but I want you to demonstrate first or use a video that can demonstrate for you. Here's the key. Don't give the kids the tools right away. Okay, classroom teachers always tell me that if you give the kids the manipulatives, the math things that they're going to use, well, what are they going to do? They're going to stop listening right away and they're going to start playing with their stuff, right? So don't give the kids the tools. Let them just watch you, and you're going to commentate on every step you do. Sometimes you might even make a mistake or sort of pseudo demonstrate a mistake and show what happened and how they can avoid it. Never have a kid practice making the mistake. You can maybe have them just watch you, right? We only want the kids to practice the right way. Now, step 2 is the guide step. This is the most overlooked step when parents are trying to teach their kids something, and it's so, so helpful. We call this the hand over hand technique. You can see that my daughter's hands are actually over mine in this photo. Sometimes the parent's hands will go over the child. This helps kids understand how much pressure to use. Okay, when you're doing things like cracking an egg, stirring a big bowl of granola, or like scraping scrambled eggs or cutting a carrot, the kids can see what your hands are doing. They can see your technique, but they can't really see how much pressure you're using, which is why some kids smash those eggs on the counter and make the mess, right? And some kids are stirring and they pop the oats right out of the bowl and makes a big mess. So this guide step, if you're someone who doesn't like messes, the guide step is very, very important. By the time my kids are like 18 months, 2 years old, if I'm baking, they constantly have their hand on top of mine for like 2 years. And by the time they're 4, maybe 5, they're ready to crack eggs, and they do it flawlessly. My daughter, Leah, she's now almost 13, but when she was 4, I can still remember her cracking a dozen eggs for a recipe flawlessly because she learned how much pressure to use with the guide technique. Now, after you've demonstrated, after you've guided, long time for little kids, maybe 5 seconds or a minute for big kids, now you want to coach to independence. Okay, I want you to stay nearby. I want you to use your words and have some common vocabulary to make sure your kids don't fall into bad habits, right? We all know that it's so much easier to get a good habit going than it is to break a bad habit. So we want them to learn their techniques and get their hands in the right spot, so that they get good habits. Realize that cooking is a process, okay? The younger the kids are, the harder it's going to be for them. And they might not be perfect right away. In fact, they won't be. And so just like a coach of a sports team, you're going to give your kids lots of opportunities for repetition to get closer and closer to independence. Okay. And some of our fun phrases like up and over soldier with the knives or Pac-Man lid when we're working at the stove, these really cement in the safety rules and techniques because it automatically builds in that repetitive nature. So give your kids lots of practice and realize that they have lots of time to get better at teaching. Okay. If you heard anything that you'd love to try for your kids right away, I would love to hear that in the chat. And I know that a lot of us wish their kids would clean up right? Clean up the kitchen and do dishes. And what's great about teaching kids to cook is when you take a few steps, when you start coaching to independence, you really do get paid back almost immediately, right? You get sous chefs before dinner. Your kids are able to make snacks independently. And Tara from Oregon says now that they've got some basics down, they've actually started taking initiative. Oh my, the kids took initiative in other kitchen duties, including cleanup and dishes. It's like the holy grail of parenting. Lisa Tim is a homeschooling mom, and I'm fairly certain she actually is a Homeschool Buyers Co-op member that Homeschool Buyers Co-op shared with me, with permission, of course. And she said, since starting this course with Mrs. Kimball, my kids actually want to help me in the kitchen every day, even though they never asked to help before, right? That's the confidence loop in action. It feels good to help. And if you dream of your kids asking to help out and being capable of doing it, that is awesome. And that's our last big section, right? How to motivate your kids to want this too. But first, I want to take a little pause to talk about how you can make it happen, right? I hope you're with me. I hope you're on board that yes, my kids need to learn life skills. I would love my kids to learn to cook. I've got some ideas, demonstrate, guide, coached independence on how to make it happen. And so what's going to work for you? You know, you might put your kids in an in-person class. They're a little complicated right now with COVID. They tend to be a little expensive, but they can be really fun. And at least they get that cooking. We know a lot of kids love watching those cooking shows, MasterChef Junior, Kids Baking Championship. And I love those too because they tend to motivate kids to want to cook, but they move way too fast to be an actual like teaching, right? But super good motivation if you love watching those shows as a family. There's lots of great kids cookbooks out there. So you could use some kids cookbooks to teach your kids to cook. I do have to give a little shout out to Chef Junior because my son and 4 friends are actually the kid authors of this book. It's the only healthy foods cookbook written by kids for kids. So if you are going to get a kids cookbook, totally look that one up. It rocks. But if you'd like a little help, if you want a little more than a cookbook can give, I'd love to be on your team. I'd love to be on your parenting team because I can help you make sure the skills are taught in a logical order. I can help you make sure you choose the right tools, the right kid-friendly recipes, and so that you have that language that speaks to kids' need for fun and repetition, right? If you're not super confident in the kitchen yourself, you'll have those videos that demonstrate for you, that slow down and like actually learn step by step. We find that when families just buy a cookbook, they tend to feel a lot of stress because the cookbook is sitting on the shelf collecting dust, because most often the kids open the cookbook and they can't do it themselves. So you still need the skills to go with the cookbook. So I am totally here for you on your parenting team. We'll talk a little bit about Kids Cook Real Food. That's our online course. We serve kids ages 2 to teen with over 30 basic cooking skills. Okay. I take a skills over recipe approach because I really believe that kids need like foundational skills, and I want them to be able to feel confident in tackling any recipe they come across, right? One of my daughter's favorite things to do is to search up recipes constantly. Like literally when she gets stressed out, I'll find her in the corner with her laptop. I'll say, "What are you doing, honey?" I'm just looking for keto recipes for dad. Like it is her stress relief. So it's easy for kids to look up recipes. And if it's easy for them to make the recipes because they have the skills, total score for everyone, right? So this is me. This is Kids Cook Real Food, holding your hand every step of the way with professionally filmed videos and lesson plans for you. And other parents say things like this. Donna says, my 5-year-old always asks to help, but I never knew how to start. So after just one class, just the knife skills class, he cut up avocados and lettuce for tacos and made a fruit salad. And they loved it because the style of Kids Cook Real Food is memorable. It is kid friendly. And Donna says she's excited to get him involved more in food prep. So if you're excited to get your kids more involved in food prep, what I want to do next is show you a little bit about how we break skills down into different age groups. So look for your children's age group, right? And so whether we work together or not, you'll get an idea of what would be appropriate for different kids at different ages. So we call our beginner level kind of our preschool kids, ages 2 to 5, 2 to 6. And there we're really going to focus on small motor skills, right? Those are our preschool skills. It's the same skills used to hold a pencil or a crayon and cut with scissors as you need to do things like measure a flat teaspoon, or pour, like with a pitcher, like this little guy is doing, and stir. So we teach really, really foundational skills. If you've got a preschooler, I want you to try to find something they can do independently, right? Use that idea of the mom, dad, kid, baby. And then they're independent, right? They're independent doing something as simple as measuring a teaspoon of salt. But you know as well as I do that those preschool kids, like that's all they need. They just need a little bit of involvement, right? So now if you've got a little bit bigger kids, so like early elementary, pretty much our intermediate level, I define as kids who know how to read. Once they know how to read, there are three main skills you want to teach them. First, how to read a recipe. Okay, reading a recipe is a skill very different from chapter books and children's books, right? Picture books. And so we want to teach them to read and follow a recipe well. I do think it's key to start to get sharp knives in their hands. Now, if you've got a 7 or 8 year old who has never even touched a butter knife, start with that butter knife for like a week, right? Get them comfortable, make sure that they can demonstrate safety for you, and then ask them if they feel comfortable moving to a sharp paring knife. If you feel comfortable and they feel comfortable, score, moms and dads, you're going to have a sous chef in no time. And then I also think that once kids can read, they're generally mature enough to get at the stovetop. Just like this little girl on the right, if they're short, you want to get them up above the food so they can see what they're doing, so they stay safe. In the course, of course, we teach all sorts of ways for kids to understand what's hot and what's not and keep them super safe. Now, once kids have mastered reading and following a recipe, sharp knife, and stovetop skills, now they can move into our advanced level. We say it's ages 8 and up, but really anyone who's mastered the intermediate skills can do advanced stuff. So what can you expect your kids to do? If you've got like a 9-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, you really can expect kids to make entire recipes, even to make entire meals, right? The older kids get, the more they're able to access their executive functioning skills, like setting goals and planning ahead and juggling, kind of multitasking, juggling multiple things. We really focus on creativity in our advanced level. We want kids to know that they can look at someone's recipe and they can change it up. Talk about empowering, right? We want kids to know that they can make up their own recipe, we teach them that they can open that fridge and pull out some spices and herbs and actually make things up. Now we have a huge focus on chef's knives at the advanced level because, again, I really strongly believe that if your kids are going to learn to eat healthy fruits and vegetables, they've got to cut them up. So half of the advanced level in our course is chef's knife skills and safety. Like I said, we move them into whole meals. And one thing to think about with the oven is that not only is the oven obviously very hot, but things tend to be heavy. So you need to make sure your child has the muscular strength to use the oven. And that's why it's generally for older kids, but kids as young as 8 or 10 can absolutely safely use the oven with the proper training. I love Letty's question. I'm going to address it really quickly, even though we are doing a Q&A at the end. She says, can I take the kids outside to prep to keep the mess down? And I think that's a fabulous idea. I mean, whatever you can do to make it work for you so that you say yes more than you say no is a total score. And in fact, one of the things, for me, one of the huge benefits of my kids having knife skills is the melon issue. We love fruit in our house, but buying, a huge cantaloupe or a gigantic watermelon, there's always that time it takes to cut it. My kids love fruit so much. I don't think I've cut a melon in 3 years, you guys, because they always say, Mom, can we eat the melon? I'll be like, sure. Well, are you going to cut it? And I'm like, I don't know if I'll have time. Okay, I'll cut the melon, Mom. They just jump at it. I absolutely send them outside in the summer and we just hose down the whole table and the whole deck because it just it drips. The watermelons are crazy, just drips all over. So I think outside is fabulous. But also remember that once your kids learn the skills pretty well, they're much less messy. I'm pretty messy in the kitchen, so I give mine a lot of grace. I hope it's okay if I show you around a little bit into our course. And remember, we'll finish up with those 5 tips to motivate kids to want to get in the kitchen in just a few minutes. So when you hop into our course, you'll notice that we do have it separated into that beginner, intermediate, and advanced. And we also have some really quick notes for adults to let you know, give you an overview. In every level, there are 8 all kid videos. Our course is made for big families. I mean, I have 4 kids, so I know how hard it is to find something they can all do together. And so it's really created for larger families or families with more than one kid, I guess. And so the all kid video is like a global skill that everyone from age 2 to teen needs to understand. And you would watch that together. And then you jump into your level that matches your kid's age and experience. And then we have 8 videos for each level. So for example, here's our beginner level, right? They're going to learn peeling and spreading and how to use a dull knife, how to pour, how to make a colorful salad with each color having a different superpower. And inside each level or lesson, inside each lesson, you'll have that all kid video that you watch together. And then you'll have a video ranging between 3 to 20 minutes, right? Our advanced kids are making whole meals. So the videos do get up to about 20 minutes, but they're all edited down. So it's not like kids are watching us like make an entire recipe. That gets a little boring for them. So we teach them the skill and then we sort of edit the recipe so it's shorter. We use flashcards that you can print or not, but to help you have that common vocabulary, right? How great is it that you have built-in ways to remind your kids their safety techniques? And then everything's super organized as far as groceries and supplies. You can use the quick start guide if you have like 5 minutes to prep, or if you're someone who really likes to dig in and know what's going on, we have that for you too in our detailed lesson plans. Kids Cook Solo is our new section. We created this during the pandemic because so many parents were saying, Katie, I love the idea of cooking with my kids, but right now, I have a lot of with my kids. I have a lot of time with my kids. And so Kids Cook Solo is for kids ages 8 and up who are able to be independently learning. We rearranged our videos. We took the sharp knives out and we created a dashboard that's written right to the kids. So no sidebar, no next playing like YouTube, where they can just watch for like 2 hours on accident. And we made really, really short lessons so that they're just kind of like flying through, like, for example, so each of these lessons is one video, but there's 12 pieces to it because they're going to take a quiz. They're going to read a little bit. They're going to watch the video. They're going to be told to get out the ingredients. And then they learn presentation skills from me. And with every lesson, they have to present formally to their adult what they have learned and ask permission to move forward before they actually make the food. So that's what we call our 5% participation on Kids Cook Solo. And they got a little quiz and everything. So it's very independent. It's very safe. And the adult still has that oversight of like, did they learn what they were supposed to learn? And yes, you do have my permission to make this recipe. Amy, I swear we have parents who are not named Amy in our course. Another Amy L says, you know what? Cooking with my kids stressed me out. I would constantly shoo my kids out of the kitchen, right? How many of you are like that? I know this is really common. But watching the kids cook on the videos gave me the courage to get my kids in the kitchen. And now her 4-year-old is her best little sous chef. He helps her prep for dinner. Look at that sharp knife, 4 years old. You guys, think of the potential. He cuts up fruits and veggies, and Amy loves having real help in the kitchen. So I want you to imagine life a year from now when all your kids are properly trained in the kitchen. Okay? You thought at the beginning of what kind of adult you want to raise, right? Responsible, kind, generous, creative, right? And so imagine a time when your kids are building those skills. You and your family spend meaningful, connected time in the kitchen, and maybe even your child looks forward to responsibilities around the house. Why? Because they feel their contribution matters. When our kids feel that they matter, they want to help. And feeding someone matters to everybody, right? Now, parents often say, but what if my kids won't do it, right? I don't need another power struggle like math and handwriting. I've got that all day long, Katie. And so here are 5 tips that work for different types of kids to motivate them to come in the kitchen. The first hinges on connection. And I encourage you to invite friends. You could make this your Friday homeschool fun day or a Saturday activity or an evening. And if you've got some friends that match your kids' ages, sometimes that's exactly what it takes to motivate kids to keep it fun. My son, John, he has like the same nighttime prayers every night. So thank you, God, for mom, dad. Thank you that I got to play with Simon. Simon's his best friend in the neighborhood. And what's so funny is he says that even on days that he didn't get to play with Simon because he so values his friends, right? It's such a habit for him. It's such a need for him to be with his little buddy. So for some kids, that can totally motivate them to be excited about learning to cook. Now, other kids really treasure that time with mom or dad or grandma, right? My daughter, Leah, she will go grocery shopping with me. She will beg to go grocery shopping with me because she so treasures that one-on-one time in a busy household with 6 people in it. So if you've got a kid who treasures that one-on-one time, quality time with a parent might be just the thing to motivate them. And especially, again, if you've got like more than 2 kids, that one-on-one time is a treasure because it's rare. So for, if you've got a child who really wants to learn to cook, or well, I guess we're motivating them. If you know you have a child, you really want to learn to cook, maybe if you can schedule 1 or 2 times where the other kids are off with a spouse or a neighbor or a grandparent, that can motivate them and keep them into it. We've already talked about the competence-confidence loop, and building that confidence really, really does motivate kids. So remember that all you have to do is start with one skill, right? One little skill. And when they feel that confidence or competence, the confidence will flow and they'll want to come back. So sometimes you just tell yourself, like, okay, this feels like a little bit of a battle, but maybe if I can just get them in here for one skill, it will really help. Another way to build confidence is to be of service, right? Every human loves the feeling of giving to others, of seeing the smile on someone's face when they eat the food you make. So I often tell parents that the best ninja tip to get kids motivated is to get them in that one first time and then make sure that someone else is going to eat the food they make, right? Maybe you're having the grandparents over, maybe you're going to a party or a potluck. Have the neighbors over, whatever you can do so that someone outside of just the siblings is eating the food, because there's a huge built-in opportunity, because people will say, oh my goodness, this is so good. You say, oh yeah, my daughter made it. Oh yeah, my son made it, right? And then their confidence soars and it feels great and they want to come back. Finally, tip number 5 is about creativity. I do think that the kids love working with their hands. They love seeing what they can create. And this little one in the center here, her name's Ava. She is 2 years old, you guys. 2 years old. And she had all the focus and concentration to cut that entire plate of peppers and cucumbers with a butter knife. Now, granted, I think mom like pre-cut them into larger pieces and she cut them into smaller, but you know what? She feels great about it. Patience on the right and Rebecca on the left, they feel so good about serving their family, so that when we can raise those expectations, and they can meet our expectations, it just feels so great that they want to come back. They want to be creative. Okay, so as a teacher, I'm going to, of course, do a quick recap. First, we talked about the biggest mistake parents make and how we don't align our expectations with our kids' abilities. So for our little children, we want to slow down and kind of lower our expectations, realize that their small motor skills aren't very good. With our bigger kids, once they can read, raise those expectations, raise the bar, parents, because kids will rise up to it. That 3-step superpower process is demonstrate, guide, remember that hand over hand, it's so key, and coach to independence. You can use that in the kitchen. You can use that to teach your kids to clean a toilet or do their laundry, right? Lots of ways. Parents tell me they use it all the time. We talked about those 5 ways to motivate kids in the kitchen. And when they do start helping, it's great that you can get back a little time too, right? So my dream for you is that when you make cooking happen as a family training and a family routine, you get time back immediately. Okay. I want you to be like the mom in the bottom center who gets to do her Bible study because the kids are making dinner. Okay. I've gotten a night off of dinner every week for the last 3 years because Paul and Leah have been making dinner starting from the time they were 9 and 12. Cool, right? Not only do you get a little time back, but I promise your kids will gain incredible confidence. You'll love that quality time as a family working together toward a common goal, which is it's a different feel than a homeschool day. Plus, the kids will be so proud of their food. Most likely, they will start to eat healthier, which is a great goal, especially if you've got those picky eaters. Anne discovered that her kids actually thanked her for cooking time. I love this picture so much. They're all in their aprons, dad's in the back, everyone's got their own cutting board. It's just beautiful. Anne says they loved it. My 12-year-old boy gave me a huge hug, thanked me, and said it was super fun to learn to cook. The 9-year-old boy at bedtime said, I wish we could do cooking class every day. I don't know if kids say that about handwriting, but cooking class really is that motivating. And, myself, I confessed my embarrassing garlic story to you that I didn't really learn to cook until college. Now, my mom and my grandma are great from scratch cooks. And it was kind of funny when I told Leah the story of the garlic. She heard that story for the first time when she was about 10. And she looked at me and she said, Mom, I think I'm a better cook now than you were when you were in college. And I know she's right. I know she's right. And she has such confidence in her own cooking ability that she actually took her great grandma's apple pie recipe and reduced the sugar by half. Now, her Gigi, my grandma, heard that Leah had made this whole pie and was very impressed. But then she heard she messed with the sugar. She put her hands on her hips and looked at me and said, Katie, is it still sweet? Because I like sugar. 93-year-olds have a certain way about knowing what they want, don't they? And, it was a great moment, which really demonstrates in my book the approach we take at Kids Cook Real Food, right? We focus on connection, and making great grandma's apple pie builds that connection to your history, to your family, to your food. We see confidence, right? Leah was complimented by the entire extended family at Thanksgiving for that apple pie. And so having that success, getting that confidence, doing real authentic work truly builds kids' confidence. And of course, we know that my little Leah was very creative and was able to tweak her great grandma's recipe and felt that, she had the creative license to do that. And that's exactly what I would like to invite you to join me to do. Homeschool Buyers Co-op, of course, carries Kids Cook Real Food at their special super fancy discount. Today, because you've been hanging in here with me and focusing, committing to teaching your kids to cook and learning all these skills, you get an extra 5% off with the code KCRF5. I'd be honored to be on your parenting team. And really the deal is that I have 42 total years parenting experience. If you add up all my kids' ages, right? I have cooked well over 5,000 dinners for my family. I've packed over 2,500 lunches in my life. And although that's about to stop growing because 3 of my 4 kids pack their own lunches, and my kids have cooked at least 100 dinners by themselves. Okay. Plus, I have 5 years of teaching over 18,000 families how to get their kids comfortable in the kitchen. So to borrow that kind of experience that's the true deal, right? We know Homeschool Buyers Co-op gives you a great deal, but the true deal is that you get to borrow all that experience when I'm on your parenting team. So you're super warmly invited to join Kids Cook Real Food. I think Caitlin is going to come back on for some Q&A. If there were any questions that came in, I'm happy to stay for a little while. Oh, I said Caitlin, sorry.
It's fine. It happens all the time. Hi,
I bet.
everyone. So I gotta say, 2 things that really stuck out to me were the grandma story and the creative license your daughter took. Incredible. I thought that was super cool. And then also, I hate cutting up pineapples more than anything in the entire world. And I now have like a dream of sloughing that onto my children the same way you do with melons.
I have also not cut a pineapple in a couple of years. It is true.
Oh my gosh. My mom was visiting recently and she said, "Oh, can you get a pineapple?" And I was just like, "Absolutely not if you want me to cut it. If you're going to cut it, sure." I hate it. I hate it so much. But I love pineapples. So this is I now have dreams for my future. Things are looking a lot less bleak. So we do have a bunch of questions, but before we get to that, I just want to reiterate Kids Cook Real Food at the co-op. We've got a super sweet deal going on right now. For the regular Kids Cook Real Food course, it's 25% off. It's lifetime access, and it comes with a free ebook about healthy snacks, which is just a super duper great deal. And then the new course, Kids Cook Solo, is 20% off at the co-op. So it's only $39.95, which is awesome. I believe you keep access for a year.
I think it's a year on that one. Yep. And just to clarify, Kids Cook Solo is inside the VIP. So if you go for like the everything, you get Kids Cook Solo too with access that does not expire.
Oh, that's fantastic to know.
So you get it all.
Oh, that's great. And then, so yeah, even, and then for our lovely webinar registrants, there is the extra 5% off. But be sure, if you're interested in that and you're interested in the program, that coupon expires at 11:59 p.m. Pacific time tomorrow. So it's really short-lived. I will be sending an email with the link to where you can rewatch this online at your convenience. And I'll put the coupon code in there so you remember. But just make sure it's only good for a day and a half at this point, so we don't want you to miss out. So now that's all that's been said, let's get to some of these great questions. So the first one is, how young is too young? I'm sorry, I'm reading this wrong. How young is too young to introduce this to your child? And then if I have a 6-year-old and a toddler, can I introduce them to cooking at the same time, or do I need to do it separately for their different skill levels?
Yep, such a good question. It is never too young to get your kids in the kitchen. Like, I used to wear my babies in a sling, and that exposure to the sights and sounds and smells of the kitchen is super important. So about 18 months to 2 years is when I would start officially kind of teaching them some skills, just butter knives and bananas and, letting them explore. So 6-year-old and a toddler at the same time. Absolutely possible to teach them together. I would say work at the table. That's the hot tip for the little kids, so that they're not, especially with 2, so that they're not like really up high at the counter. If you work at the table, there's less like fall hazard. They can, just use a normal chair and get them up on their knees. But absolutely, they can learn some of the skills together, because if your 6-year-old is a novice, and he or she needs to learn to use that butter knife with that banana, toddler can do it too. And then as the 6-year-old is able to level up a little bit, nap time is a great time to have that sort of one-on-one, right, special time with the 6-year-old. But absolutely, I would teach together. And even if different skills, you can have the 2-year-old continuing with like the butter knife and some soft melon pieces that you've pre-cut, into the moons or whatever, or have the toddler continue to work on pouring off to the side while you're leveling up the 6-year-old and doing some more advanced stuff.
Great, and that actually leads into another question that was further down the list, but I'm going to bump it up because it's related. Can you tell us some safe ways to get the kids to counter and stove height? Like, the table advice is great, but what about like in the actual kitchen?
Yeah, so I do like to see kids at the table. Also, that alleviates the elbow room issue in the kitchen. Bigger kids are able to stand at the table, and that's a good counter height. When you think about the counter, it hits you about the belly button. So if the table hits your child about the belly button, that's the best height for them. In the kitchen, they sell those learning towers, right? That have there's like the kids kind of climb into a box, and they have barriers around, so they absolutely can't fall. Personally, I just use a sturdy folding chair or kitchen chair, kitchen table chair, and get them up there. And then we have really sturdy sort of little kid table chairs. So the taller, sometimes the kids get so tall, or like they still need a boost, but the kitchen chair is too tall. They're like way too high up. So then they grab like our very sturdy wood kind of little kid table chairs. I do not think there's any wrong way to get kids up, but you do just think about that belly button height. If you can help the counter hit them right around the belly button, they're going to be comfortable.
Awesome. And then we have another 2-parter. Oh, sorry, I just threw my pen accidentally that I hold for comfort and made a clatter, so I apologize. What are the most memorable meals your kids have made for you entirely on their own? And what was the first thing they were able to cook entirely on their own?
Ooh, so I'm going to answer those in reverse order, because I have to think about the
Excellent.
first one. When Paul and Leah started cooking dinner completely by themselves, again, they were 9 and 12. And it happened because I wanted to volunteer at church for high school youth group. And my husband said, honey, that is right at dinner time. And as much as you say that you'll get dinner ready early, you're going to be so stressed out and like throwing a half done dinner on the table, and then we'll be stressed out. And no, you can't volunteer at church. So I was like, So my troubleshooting led me to ask Paul and Leah, like, what do you guys think? Would you be willing to make dinner every other Sunday so I can volunteer at church? They said yes. So what we did was choose one recipe that we love, which was this grain-free pizza. And I made it in front of them. I demonstrated the whole recipe, put it in the oven. They started over right that same night, did the whole recipe with me watching but not touching. And then the following week, I left. So, I mean, husband was home, safe, but no one was there in the kitchen helping them. So it was completely independent. And so so they made that grain-free pizza every night, or sorry, not every night. That's a lot of pizza. Every other Sunday night for a whole year. And you can actually see them. They made a video of themselves doing it where like my son has edited the video and everything. I was not involved in it. kidscookrealfood.com/pizza. Yeah.
That's awesome. And then, the $1 million question, how was it?
Oh, it's always good.
Awesome. So exciting.
Always good. So
that's so cool.
The most memorable, I just figured it out. I was going to tell a story from a few weeks ago, but I have an even better one. The most memorable was a learn from failure night. At least an expected learn from failure. We tell our kids all the time, like we learn from failure and that's good. It was this same timing, right? I'm heading off to youth group. In their second year, they had to make a new recipe every other week, right? So they're still making the pizza, but then every other time they had to like figure out something different. So that was how we kind of grew them gradually. And it was 5 p.m. I was leaving and they had some ground pork thawed and didn't even know what they were making yet for dinner. And I'm like, I gotta go. Like, I can't, I'm like, bye guys. And I'm driving to church thinking they're going to learn from failure tonight. I can't wait to hear the story when I get home. Right. I get home at 8 and my daughter, Leah, 10 years old at the time, ran to the door to meet me. Looking up, she said, Mom, it's amazing. It's amazing. We decided to make breakfast burritos and we made homemade sausage and homemade tortillas and we just like made it up. We threw some sausage and onions and peppers in a pan and made potatoes and it was so good and we just made it up. But Mom, there's none left for you.
How dare they?
Well, they were so good. They ate it all.
Still,
I've never been so pleased to be hungry and wrong.
That's
right?
Amazing.
No big deal because they totally made it up out of their heads without a recipe. And I was so proud. I found something to eat, no problem. I'm happy to be wrong. They did not learn from failure. They figured it out. So that's definitely the most memorable.
Oh, that's so incredible. Oh, I love that story. Okay. So the last question, which I'm very interested to know the answer to. How young can you introduce children to electrified kitchen tools like a stand mixer, a food processor, or a blender?
Sure. Good question. My button pushers are usually my youngest kids, actually, because they, it's a tandem job. But if I'm doing something in the blender or the food processor, it's my 2 and 3-year-olds who I would say, hey, who wants to push the button, right? 3-year-olds, you say, find the button with the P on it or with the S. It's great, great academic integration. So they start learning to use them really, really young. How young do I let them use them themselves? It's probably just based on whether they can lift the things. I mean, I can picture my little Leah making stuff in the food processor pretty much by herself by age 5. So I think we teach parents that like the slow cooker, the Instant Pot, those are also electric appliances. They're great for teaching kids to cook because you almost always load them off and cold. Right. So kids as young as 5, I have a video too of my son, John, when he was 5, making an entire mac and cheese pretty much by himself in the Instant Pot.
Awesome. And are there any Instant Pot ideas included in Kids Cook?
Yes. The main course with like the 30 basic skills does not use the Instant Pot, but we have one of the VIP bonuses is actually a video with 3 of the main skills adapted to use the Instant Pot. So like rice, cooking ground beef, and cooking dry beans. You learn both ways, which is great for kids too. And we have an additional Instant Pot slow cooker, like additional module you can buy too, just because it's so great for kids to feel like I can make a whole dinner, and parents kind of like sometimes that they don't have to turn on the stove, right? Instant Pot slow cooker is just like a great boost. So yeah, I'd start them really young. That's a great question. I have never gotten that question before. That's a really good one. I get that question all the time about the sharp knives.
Interesting. I believe it. Yeah, but that was a great one. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we are a little bit over time, so we're going to have to, say goodbye to Katie for the day. Thank you so much for joining us. This was great. I got to say that I have 2 kids that just freshly turned 2, and I am super excited to get knives in their hands now, which is not something I expected to say. So I hope that reverberates with all of our attendees as well. Thank you so much, Katie. Anybody who's interested in Kids Cook Real Food, please visit, Homeschool Buyers Co-op with that little hyphen.org. You can just put Kids Cook in the search box and it'll come right up for you. That extra 5% discount, again, only for you guys and only available until midnight tomorrow. Thank you all so much to our attendees and again to Katie. It's been just really, really wonderful having you with us today.
You are so welcome. Let's get all those kids in the kitchen.
Yes. Awesome. Okay, well, bye everyone. Have a great day.